Welcome to our Below the Belt podcast. Guys, it's another day here, episode 22, and it's so great to have each and every one of you. And let us know that you guys are picking us up as clearly as you can. We are delighted to be here with each and every one of you. Wherever you guys are joining us from around the world, welcome. And we are so happy that so many of you have joined us today. We could not ask for more. Welcome to each and every one of you guys, wherever you guys are joining us from. It is our privilege to be here with you another day. Please let us know that you are receiving our audio very clearly. I see Lauren Jones has already joined us on YouTube. Good to see you, Lauren, and all the other folks who are going to be joining us. Really good to see each and every one of you and the other folks who are going to be joining us today as well on social media around the world. Guys, it's a privilege. We have a very special guest today. Let me tell you that. Up front, get it out of the way. A very special guest, the one and only Rickford Burke, is going to be joining us for this podcast. And we're so privileged, so very privileged to have Rickford. A lot of fast moving events on the ground. We have the sitting of Parliament, and they're going to be discussing, among other things, that wicked, nasty National Resource Fund bill. That's going to be one of the things happening at Parliament, and we know there are lots of protesters out there at this time. Our thoughts are with them. I even touched base with them on the ground there this morning as I went into the National Assembly. I stepped away for a couple minutes so that we can do the business of this podcast. We can talk to Rickford, and we can get a sense of what's happening, how you guys are receiving this in the diaspora as well. Again, guys, really good to have each and every one of you with us, wherever around the world you guys are joining us from. As you come into the live stream, as you come into the podcast, as Michael Gittins has already said, share the live stream. Guys, let us know that you are receiving us very clearly out there. Let us know that you guys are receiving us clearly out there. Share the podcast. I'm going to have Rickford with us in just a bit. It's a good day to be outside protesting, guys. It's a good day to be outside protesting. The weather. It looks like it's going to hold. We want to tell you that currently it's the temperature is good outside. I don't know about the temperature where Rickford is. It might be different, but we're going to touch base with Rickford quite shortly. But the weather where we are, it seems to be a good day to be outside, and especially a day like today to make your voices heard. So those of you who haven't gone down there yet to the Ortichon Conference Center where the Parliament is sitting, you should be heading down there. We should be heading down there, and you could be in a bus, in a taxi, and still listening to us once again a little data. It's 28 degrees outside, folks, here in Georgetown. 28 degrees outside, and there's a very slim chance of rain this afternoon. There's a 13% chance of rain this afternoon, and we say it's a good day to be outside. It's a good day for a protest. And it's time we move off of social media and we get on the ground. I was on the ground with the protesters this morning, talking with some of them, and as soon as I done here, I back on the ground, people. That's how we gotta do it. As soon as I'm finished with the podcast, I know there are lots of you in the diaspora and perhaps in the far-flung areas of the country that wish you could have been here. But we feel you guys. You can be an activist on social media as well. Share our live stream. Let people know what's happening in this country. We want to see those emojis as well. Folks, I'm very privileged to have with me the one and only Rickford Burke. Rickford, welcome. And I'm really grateful you're sharing this time with us during lunch. Traditional lunch.
Good morning. Good morning to you, Honorable Member of Parliament, and to your listeners.
Fantastic. Rickford, it's always a privilege to have you here with us. What's the weather doing where you are?
Rickford? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you asked. There's a big feedback.
There's a big feedback. Let me perhaps hang up with you, Rickford, and call you back in a second and see if we can change that. I don't know if the guys out there hearing that. Guys, let us know how you're receiving the audio at your end. If the audio is clear, I'm going to hang up with Rickford and call back. Yep. Yep. So happy that so many of you are joining us for our podcast today. We see you out there, Stacey Lewis. We see you out there, Chisung Henry, Teresa Downs, and Sharon Grant. I see you, German Osborne and Bull Page. I see you also, Jackie Beard and Brian and Brian Soker. I see you also, Priscilla McKenzie, Mickle, and Lennox Anderson. All you fantastic folks watching us. Let me see if we're faring differently with Rickford. Rickford, let us know if you're still getting that feedback at your end. The folks are saying they're hearing us loud and clear.
Well, I'm hearing you, but go ahead.
Yes, Rickford. I was just asking how is the weather. Let's start with how the weather is where you are.
Oh, the weather's fine. Well, not fine. It's cold. It's moderately cold. It's 43 degrees.
Fantastic.
So we have that soggy kind of overcast weather like London.
But I'm happy that I'm happy that even with that you are here with us in spirit and very concerned about what's happening on the ground. Rickford, what are your thoughts about this nasty Natural Resources Fund bill that the PPP is attempting to pass in the National Assembly? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's an attempt to legalize the theft of the oil money. And that's why the PPP government fought to go into power, because they wanted money. The PPP is all about money. Now, the Granger administration in 2019 passed the, as you know, Natural Resource Fund Act. And this act is supposed to facilitate the oil revenues being placed in a bank account in New York, where it can attract some hefty interest, I guess, and managed well. And as part of the oversight mechanism for the fund, the Granger administration law made provision for an oversight committee that would comprise a wide membership from a wide cross section of the Guyanese society, and that these are spent strictly for the development of Guyana and to improve the lives and well-being of the people of Guyana. And so what this new bill that the PUP government is bringing, it's removing all of the accountability provisions of the Granger Administration Act. And I mentioned the broad-based committee, which is called the Public Accountability and Oversight Committee. And the way that provision was structured is for that committee to have a representative from all 10 regions, a representative from the civil society organizations, a representative from women's organizations, a representative from youth organizations, a representative of the trade union movement, the Transparency Institute, community organizations, the Bar Association, the Press Association, the Consumers Association, representative from the Association of Chartered Accountants, the Private Sector Commission, and the University of Guyana. You can't get more transparent than that. That's a broad-based committee to provide oversight, to see exactly where this money is going, to ask questions, to see who's signing for what and where it's going. And the PPP wants to avoid that.
Yeah.
And so what they're doing is taking away the people's ability to monitor the fund. They believe that they alone own Guyana's resources and Guyana's money, Guyana's wealth. And we know what they have been doing since they were in government before. They have been stealing billions and billions and billions of dollars. The international community estimated that from the last PP government, that 23 years they were in power, they stole approximately $5 billion US dollars. Professor Dr. Clive Thomas did a study that showed from 2001 to 2008, they stole $1 billion US dollars. And from 2020 to 2012, just 2 years, they stole approximately $500 million US dollars. That's not me, Richard, saying that this is what researchers have found. And so we know when the PPP is in government, we have to put all mechanisms in all mechanisms possible in place to ensure accountability of the people's fund. Now, all of a sudden, a committee that represents the widest possible cross section of the community, of the society in Guyana, the PPP by Jagmeer is saying it's too burdensome for them. It's too burdensome. So they have to take away that provision of the law and put a hand-picked committee appointed by the PPP there to monitor the fund. And we don't trust them. Guyanese know you don't put cat to watch milk. And the PPP has a history of being a kleptocracy. And so Guyanese must all raise their voices and go out and protest against this mad rush to grab the people's money with no trace. They don't want it to be traced. That's why they don't want an accountability committee. That's why they want to put their own people there. And they want to remove the authority of this committee to provide oversight. And even though they're, putting up this show that they'll put a 9-member committee, that committee would be their own people. But in addition to that, they're placing the management of the day-to-day management of the funds in the hands of the Minister of Finance. And we know who is the Minister of Finance, Barjagdeo. We don't know how he built that sprawling multi-hundred-million-dollar mansion at Sparnam, but we know he got it. And we know that the PPP government stole about $1 billion in 10 years and $500 million in 2. And those are the only 12 years that were examined. So and we didn't have oil then, Sherrod. So what do we think is going to happen now that we have these billions of dollars? And in addition to that, finally, they have put in a provision in this new law that they're about to pass. They're going to use their 1-seat majority to pass, where it gives them permission to withdraw $1.7 billion from the fund in a year. So every year they have given themselves the authority to take out at least $1.7 billion from the fund without without the broad-based committee to examine why that money is being taken out, where it's being spent, and give an accountability for it. They don't want that. So people of Guyana should be scared to death that the PPP is stealing their money and don't want accountability and don't want any ability to trace that money.
Indeed, Rickford. Folks who are now joining us, we're privileged to have with us today the one and only, the president of that wonderful organization. Rickford, call that name for us. It's the I always mix it up. The Caribbean Guyana Institute for Democracy. Perfect. I just want to make sure I get it right. Rickford Burke is here with us, and we're discussing this nasty natural resource fund bill that the people are attempting to pass in the National Assembly, and all things being equal, they will pass it, which give them carte blanche, the ability to rape the Treasury unhindered, because this is how they set up this bill. They have the majority in Parliament, and this is where they're going. I hope some of you are out there in front of the National Assembly making your voices heard. Rickford, the insult catfish president Irfan Ali came out yesterday, and we thought the man is going to put this thing on pause. The man dug in their heels, saying to trust us. Yeah, we ain't gonna thief. Trust me. Right? We had a problem with the finance minister having a lot of powers. Give them all to me and trust me. What are your thoughts there? I mean, you already articulated some aspects of this bill, but this whole notion of trusting the PPP, these jagabats who gave us Keldon, asking us to trust them. The jagabats who gave us a mile of falls, asking us to trust them. What are your thoughts?
Well, Sharon, we don't have to go to all of those projects. We can just go to the man himself who's saying that. The man who is asking Guyanese to trust him with the oil money is the same man that was involved in a $274 million fraud, for which he was before the court with 19 fraud charges before he was sworn in. As a matter of fact, when he was sworn in, it was only after he was sworn in, because of the presidential immunities, the charges were dismissed, and that's questionable. Because the charges weren't supposed to be dismissed. They were supposed to be, the matter should have been adjourned until he leaves office. But they dismissed it. And that's so questionable. And that's why people don't have confidence in the judiciary. But not only did he say trust us, Sherrod, he claims that at the time that the APNU AFC coalition government passed that law in 2019, it was after the no confidence motion. And so it's illegal. The PPP has arbitrarily set up this straw argument that everything the APNU coalition government did after the no confidence motion is illegal. Well, legality And laws, the constitutionality of laws, aren't determined at Freedom House. It is determined by the courts.
Precisely.
They went to court several times,
Precisely.
as you could recall, Sharon, to argue that everything the government did or certain things the government did or the government must not be allowed to do certain things, and the court rejected it because the Constitution is very clear. Even the CCJ rejected it. The Constitution is very clear that on the passage of a no confidence motion, the government, the current government, stays in place until a new president and government is sworn in. And that didn't happen until August 2nd in 2020. So, the government was perfectly legitimate. The parliament was legitimate. They were part of the parliament. The PPP was part of the parliament. So why did they collect the salary of the parliament that passed that law if they thought that the parliament was illegal? So what they're doing is the argument make no sense. One time they're arguing, trust us. Next time, the people reject that. Next argument, well, the parliament was illegal at the time, the government was illegal at the time that the law was passed. People have rejected that. Barjagbe has said, this 22-member committee is too cumbersome. We can't deal with 22 people on a board. I'm sure every board in Guyana right now got more than 22 people or at least 22 people. They were saying that is too cumbersome. They were saying that the law requires too much transparency. This is the only government in the world that is complaining about too much transparency and too much accountability. One would have thought that out of the history, the kleptocratic history of the PPP, they would want transparency. They would want 52 members of the board rather than 22. But no, they don't want the people of Guyana. They don't want the people of Guyana who represent the widest possible cross-section of the community to know what they're doing with the money. They think them alone own the country, them and their supporters. And Sharad, what they have been doing with all this theft, they are systematically transferring the wealth of the country to themselves and their ethnic supporters. And we should stop that. The wealth of Guyana belongs to everybody. And if there is going to be a transfer of wealth as a result of our exploration of our natural resources or exploitation of our natural resources, then that wealth that accrues from that exploitation of the natural resources should be transferred to every Guyanese. That's why in some countries like Libya and other countries, you have a direct cash transfer to citizens. In countries like Libya, education and medical expenses are free, even if you have to travel outside of the country for medical expenses to do a surgery. The government of Libya pays for it. When you graduate from college, having gotten a free education, the government ensures that you have a job and a house free. That's because the wealth of the country that accrues from the resources, the oil resources, belong to the people. And so we must not allow the PPP to just use Guyana's resources and the natural patrimony and our wealth only for themselves. They're a bunch of thieves. All of them are a bunch of thieves. All of them have been before the court, from the Minister of Finance to everybody. That's how they fraud. And that's how they built Protocol. You would recall that the reports that we read when the auditors provided the reports after they left government, you'll see that they use government money to lay out the infrastructure work in Protocol 1 and 2. And then they bought all of the other properties or land that they own next to nothing. Yep. And so it is because of the history of kleptocracy, the history of theft, the history of PPP fraud, that we are warning that they are about to steal the money, the oil money, and we must do everything in our power to stop them.
Rickford, I know there are folks out there from across the political divide, especially the trenches from the PPP, who tune into our program. Whether to cuss us down or to listen intelligently remains a toss-up. But there was a feeling that among them, that these guys might have changed, these leopards, right, might have changed their stripe, these jackasses might have changed from gray to some other color. But it's more of the same. They stole the last election, and now they're coming there thieving out the money right in front of the pages of their people. And it's quite surprising to see some of the trenches on talking about SOPs. 80 months later, they still want to see SOPs while these guys are thieving out the money that they themselves, the trenches and the jagabats, the vagabonds on the live stream, will not benefit from. The PP change, Rickford. They can change.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And those are all distractions. I mean, they seem to have this entitlement that every time you point out their fraudulent behavior or their wrongdoing or their unlawful conduct, they have to resort to something that they perceive in their mind was also wrong on the other side. We don't care about SOPs. Let the court determine the validity of SOPs. We are talking right now about the fraudulent behavior and the theft and kleptocracy of the PPP. They have not changed. And if you want proof that they haven't changed, look at the contracts. Look at the contracts that the tender board is giving out.
Talk the things, Rickford.
Billions upon billions of dollars to their supporters. And they're defending it. And Kemraj Ramdatan asked a question 2 weeks ago. If you want to defend your actions and say it's not racist, publish the names and the companies of publish the names and the owners of companies that have gotten contracts from the government since they came into power. Publish them. Let us see who they are. In addition to that, we know that every contract that they give out, they're getting kickback from it. Don't ask me. Ask the police. They're the ones that discovered the permanent secretary, who's a PPP person,
Sharon Hicks,
in the Ministry of Indian Affairs, collecting a bribe in order to give a contract.
And that's only one 200,000 a month.
The man alleged that is something that's been going on for years.
And he's a small contractor. 200,000 a month he had to pay up. Wow. Whoa.
Yes.
PPP could change. Shucks. Folks, this is what we have here. Those of you who now join the discussion, one of the ways, especially those of you who might be in the diaspora or the far-flung in the country, can be out there on the ground, boots on the ground, at the Arthur Chung Conference Center there in Lillianda, is to share the live stream, tag a friend, share. We want lots of people to benefit from this credible and valid information, not the propaganda those guys are perpetuating. Rickford, listen, I know you're going to be issues with David Granger. I know that. And I think it is well known by now. But I haven't seen a person who have faulted the Natural Resource Fund Bill of 2019 that came out of the coalition led by David Arthur Granger. They said, and I'm quoting Sabbath News here, it was inclusive of where the directors for the board we're going to be drawn from. It's not the government appointing. It is these several entities, these several organizations, independent of the government, these organizations, independent of the administration, will have been nominating their own rep. Now what we have is the PPP nominating who they want from several organizations to sit. Really and truly, this is Jack Dio, your best friend, Rickford. Is he orchestrated and masterminding this dastardly, wicked, nasty act? It is him. So vote David Granger for what you want, trenches and others. The consensus is that at least this piece of legislation here, the precursor to this, the Natural Resource Fund Bill, well, it was implemented into law. The Natural Resource Fund Act of 2019 was a decent piece of legislation, and Starbuck News said it offered a model of what inclusivity could have looked like nationally. Your thoughts?
Exactly. Of course, I have my issues with David Granger, but at least we know we didn't have fraud and we had good governance under David Granger. My issues with David Granger are political. Now, and that is the point I was making earlier. This isn't a hand-picked committee of 22. This is a request going to these organizations and institutions and regions, asking them to nominate a representative from among themselves to be on the committee to monitor Guyana's oil resource. Why? Because the resources and the money belongs to the people of Guyana. The PPP doesn't believe that. The PPP believe that they're in power and the money belongs to them and their supporters. And they're governing like Trump. They're taking an example from Trump. Their template for governance is Trumpism. They're only running the country for their own ethnic supporters. And so what the PPP bill does, Sharon, is it is an assault not only on good governance, it is an assault on financial accountability. It's an assault on the democratic right of the people to be involved in the management of the natural resource fund, the money that the government that we get, our country gets from the sale of oil. The PPP is denying the people that right when the money belongs to the people. And so we have to drill this in the people. The money belongs to them. The money should only be used for the development of the country and the improvement of the lives and well-being of the people. And so the people have a right to speak up and condemn. And you believe that these people will wake up. Even their own friends in the private sector have condemned the bill. The Chamber of Commerce has said, put a pause. No, we need national consultation. CGID from the diaspora, representing the diaspora, has condemned the bill. ACDA, representing the Afro-Guyanese population, have called for them to have condemned the bill and has called for them to have a referendum if you want to change the structure of the Committee of Oversight. And you have so many other organizations throughout the society condemning the bill, and they still have the goal to bring this bill. And when you check the representation of the organizations that have condemned the bill, they represent almost 70% of the population. You have private sector, civil society, political organizations, cultural organizations. And they're still going forward. Why? The only people who have not condemned the bill are the ethnic supporters. So they are definitely governing. And when we say ethnic supporters, I want to be very clear. They're very good other persons in the East Indian population of the country that don't support PPP racism, corruption, and lack of accountability and bad governance. We're not talking about those.
Yep.
There are Amerindians that the PPP is discriminating against and victimizing. We're not talking about them.
Indeed.
We are talking about the people who belong to the PPP cult, who do not believe, who express hate, who harbor hate, who have a congenital dislike for other people based on culture.
Yeah,
those are the ones we're talking, and those are the ones that the PPP is governing for.
Some of the live podcasts even know
that every person who voted for Donald Trump is not a racist, but every racist voted for Donald Trump.
Yeah,
we have the same situation in Guyana.
And we got
everybody who voted for the PPP is not a racist, but every racist in Guyana voted for the PPP. And that's who they're governing for, and we must stop them. And Sharon, we complain, but we haven't identified a solution. And I believe that we have to identify a solution and work towards that solution. And the solution to the PPP problem here is an agreement on equitable governance. Everybody must come to the table. All the stakeholders of the country, private sector, unions, community-based organizations, women's organizations, youth organizations, just as is represented in the law, must come to the table and decide on a formula for equitable governance so that we don't have a wealth transfer to East Indian supporters of the PPP alone, but you have a wealth transfer to the people of Guyana, because the resources of the people the resources of the country belong to the people of Guyana. So when we talk about equitable governance, what are we talking about? We're talking about equitable distribution of lands, equitable sale of lands, equitable award of contracts, equitable governance. We want to see board of directors of government institutions and corporations with equity, equal treatment. The Constitution of Guyana mandates it. It grants each citizen equal protection under the law.
Indeed.
And that's what we demand. We're not demanding any foreign thing.
Indeed.
We're not demanding any privilege from Barjabir. We're demanding what the Constitution and the laws and the inalienable rights of the people say. Equitable governance. Everybody must be treated equally.
Rickford, I want to circle back to two things, including equitable governance, in terms of how do we get to the table, because it seems as though to get to that table where you have all those stakeholders you've so eloquently articulated there should be at the table, you got to bring the PPP kicking and screaming. How do we get there? Number one, you talked about those organizations like AGDA who have come out and against this nasty natural resource fund bill that people are attempting to pass. And I want to also identify and say kudos to the Trade Union Congress. They have also come out against this bill. The Article 13 group, they've also come out against this bill. Transparency Institute of Guyana, they have also come out against this bill. So it's a wide cross section. I saw Starbuck News wrote some very, very strong editorials against what they're doing, including Kaito News, the editor, the publisher rather, of who Mr. Glenn Lal we had on our program just last evening, come out against this bill. So it's a wide cross section. It has nothing to do with the opposition happening to AFC, but everything to do about safeguarding what is rightfully all of ours, and including more so the future generation. That's what it's about. Not so, Rickford?
Of course, and that's why I said that when you look at the organizations, the representation the organizations that have come out against this bill present, it's about 70% of the population. And if you have 70% of the population, then you stop. You have to stop. Because what you're going to do then is drive the country into civil conflict. Because people are going to start protesting, and then the government is going to use this strong arm tactics, and we're going to have a confrontation. Mm-hmm. And in terms of coming to the table to answer your question, if the PPP doesn't believe that, let me give you an example. I was talking to Congressman Tom Swazi, and I was telling him about the racism, and he stopped. We were walking, and he stopped. And he said, so what is the government doing about it? What are people doing about it? And I said, well, the government is trying to jail everybody who talks about it. Mm-hmm. That's what they're doing. You would think that this government has a conscience, that the African Guyanese population, part of the East Indian population, part of the Amerindian population, is saying, one, there's racism, there's victimization, there's racial discrimination based on race. ANOC said it yesterday, and ANOC is part of their organization in terms of whatever arrangement they made for the elections. Mm-hmm. And ANOC has come out and said there is discrimination based on race. You would think that with so much condemnation and exposure of your racism, both at home and abroad, that they would give themselves pause. But it seems as though they're on an express train, like somebody expect something's gonna happen soon that would not make them give them the authority to govern further. So they have to do whatever they have to do now. They're in a mad rush to steal the money. This is about theft. And I said earlier, they're keeping the money in front of the face, and they're going to Parliament to pass a law to legalize theft of the money, of the oil money. Can you believe that? They have the effrontery to go and pass a law that would legalize theft. In addition to that, you notice recently that I think it was Jagder said that the government is coming with laws to prevent people from disclosing accounts and financial records with regard to the oil money. So they want to bring a law to prevent you from leaking information with regard to the oil money. They want to bring a law that prevents you from disclosing the fact that they're thieving the money. And they want to bring a law now that gives them the right to thief the money. What sort of government is that?
Rickford is an upside-down government.
We must do everything in our power to bring them to their knees until they get senses. And the international community must work with the local population, or a wide cross-section of the local population, to help bring a resolution to this crisis. It's a crisis. The PPP does not own Guyana's resources, and it's a shame and disgrace that the representatives of the international community, including those ABC diplomats, sit down there and see corruption, massive corruption, uncontrolled racism, and they're quiet. And I keep asking, is it because the victims of PPP racism are black people? because where the countries where those diplomats are from, have no respect for black people, some of them, some of their governments. Thank God we have a change of government here. But in England, that government, when you see what they want to do with some of the immigrants, they don't have respect for black people. When you look across Europe, they enslave black people. When you look at in America, under the government that appointed this ambassador, they have no respect for black people. So maybe that's why they're quiet. But we must make them speak up, because they were very vocal under the Granger administration, and they must be vocal now when they see all of these atrocities
with the Guardians,
bad governance and corruption.
With the Guardians, that's a good question. What happened to the Guardians of democracy? They have suddenly gotten their 30 pieces of silver, and so they've gone quiet. Siobhan McDonald, exactly. not so. Maureen Coppin Williams, Lynette Zephyr, Glennis Mingo Bourne, Laverne Cameron, Sheena Hazel. Not so. They've gotten their 30 pieces of silver, and they're gone quiet. Lawson Page and Rennie Mackenzie Talbot, Laverne Lincott, they have gotten their 30 pieces of silver, and they're gone quiet. Guys, share the live stream, and we want to see those emojis as well. Hundreds of you are watching us, and we want to get out this information. Don't bother with the trenches and the jagabats on the right podcast, talking the nonsense. Some of them outside the Artichung Convention Center, but I'm happy that the guys out there dealing with them. Folks, we got to get these people out, you know. Rickford, we got to get these people out. We can't take 5 years in this. We cannot take 5 years of this. And people are hoping that we have the kind of person we need in the new leader of the PNCR that is going to help us, because he's supposed to have some unique skill sets. Richford, we might need you on the ground here too. We might you on the, you know, soon you say Rickford, bug them guys to start trembling. You know them guys that start trembling. I am telling you, they think they're Scotland Yard or Interpol or something like that. The people upside down. You know, I see, Rickford, we're seeing some weird things on the ground. These guys are going after people who selling firecracker with a ferocity, fireworks with a ferocity. 2 tons of cocaine was shipped to Belgium. We'll see them people gone up the cold step yet. We see 1,300 pounds was shipped to the Netherlands the other day. We see nobody. We see they're going after these traffickers with the ferocity. They're going after people who selling fireworks. Rickford, fireworks, just for engaging the attention of the government. Fireworks, people selling. To catch your hand in this hard guava season. Things tight here, wherever you are around the world. Things tight in Guyana. Be worried about fireworks. We are having the sitting of the National Assembly to debate and talk about the people's business. To talk about the people's business. In the middle of that, Rickford, blackout. In the middle of that, blackout. Rickford, if that happens in the Congress of the United States, you can appreciate being there, what the repercussions would be. Blackout. Rickford, in the oil-producing republic, the National Assembly.
Somebody's going to be fired. Somebody's going to be fired.
Or promoted.
And Sharon, let me say this. What you said about the cracking down on this sand is very important. The PPP is establishing not only an apartheid regime, not only an ethnocracy, they're establishing a full-fledged dictatorship and autocratic regime. They are cracking down on dissent. They don't want people to oppose them. They don't want people to express opposition to what they're doing. So what they're doing is going through the community, going through the society, and try to use the police force as their own vendetta squad. The police force has replaced the death squad, you know. They're tracking you and shooting people and all of that like the death squad was doing. They have now empowered the police force to be their personal PPP death squad. So what they're doing is going through the society to eliminate all possible avenues of dissent. So they see the man who's selling firecrackers, not as something, I mean, we know firecrackers are illegal, but some forms of them are not. So they're thinking that, okay, firecrackers, if somebody throw firecrackers, you know, they can come and burn down something, or just so they can blame firecrackers about it, now they build police buildings. Right? Somebody talking, criticizing the government overseas, we got put out a wanted bulletin for the man.
Oh, yeah.
We got on Sherrod. Right? I hear they're planning for you. Police officers have said to me they're planning for Sherrod.
But I'm planning for them too, Rickford. I'm planning for them too.
Right. And let me tell you something. A law enforcement agency in America has confirmed to me that the Guyana government is conducting espionage. They're aware that they're listening to people's phone call.
Yep.
They're aware that SOCO, a law enforcement agency in the United States, is monitoring SOCO, who is invading the privacy of American citizens. SOCO is listening to the calls of Americans when they call Guyana, which is a violation of U.S. law. So let me put SOCO on notice that we know what they're doing.
Yep. Wicked
And
stink and
whoever
dirty.
else is tapping people's phones in Guyana, we want to let you know that United States law enforcement know what you're doing.
And look, and look
the
the people
names of some of these officers involved in this activity. Because we got our own intelligence, Sharon.
Look at the people who listening.
I don't want to say more than that because you can't give the enemy more, but I want to put them on notice that we know when they're listening to we listening to them.
Yep, and we know them, the wicked stink and dirty. The head of SOCO, Mr. Karen Bash, he was investigated by the Police Force Commission, by the Police Service Commission, and found him wanted on sexual misconduct. So when he talking about Jordan misconducting himself in office, you can imagine the hypocrisy. Right, hypocrisy. That is why he took the folks to court, the commission to court, because they did not want to promote him, because he was under investigation, and they found him wanting in that investigation. 2 young women gone to the police force.
It's not a regular investigation. The man was under investigation for sexual misconduct.
Yeah.
Who in their right mind promotes a man who is under investigation for sexual misconduct?
The PPP them
assaulting women under his command. That's a serious crime.
The PPP, them is do it. The PPP, them is do it. And that is why whoever calls the black on this morning, then get a promotion. Who brings back a man who your own government fire from GPL, for mismanagement and corruption? Your own government fire, you bring it back to manage the entity. And what the hell do you expect? Not more of the same? They would promote them. The PPP.
Yep.
More of the same, Rickford. More of the same. So whatever plans they got, they better come good. They better come good. Whatever plans they have, you think it's only they planning? A lot of people planning. How are we planning? Every day we wake up, we planning.
Sharon, what's it before they put out a wanted bulletin for you? They're not misusing everything. Wanted bulletin, they're misusing the police force, they're misusing SOCO. SOCO is supposed to go after the assets that were stolen. That's what they're supposed to investigate. Now they're investigating Jordan, they're investigating this body, they're investigating that body,
investigating
people in Boston, they're investigating this, they're investigating. You know what SOCO is doing?
Rickford.
SOCO is almost acting like the special branch.
Yep.
And my father was a special branch officer, so I know what special branch is supposed to do. And I worked in office with the president, and I saw special branch reports.
Rickford.
So I know what SOCO is doing. What these people are doing is they've established a police state, and they have their intelligence agents from both the GDF and the police, and their own private thing, whatever they're doing, with this new regional security force, because I know some people working in that same force from the GDF. And so they have these people throughout the society monitoring people. And Sharon, in the meantime, they can't put enough patrols on the street to control crime. Look how many murders we're having.
Oh, yes.
This month alone, December, look how many murders.
Oh, yes.
They couldn't save the life of Garfield. The young man, what's his name? Garfield Newton?
Yeah.
They couldn't save the lives of those other young men that were murdered. They couldn't save the life of the business people that have been killed and burned down.
Yeah.
But they have enough police resources to run monitoring opposition members of parliament.
Rickford.
Activists in the community.
I have said
it's a disgraceful abuse and misuse of the police resources of the country by a tyrannical,
dictatorial,
epocratic administration.
Yep, that is what it be. What I said to the guys, listen to me. They come for me. You understand me? We prepare for the worst, you know. The good book tells us, Jean Bond and Sheena Hazel, Veronica Haymon, Chevron McDonald. The good book tells us, he who loves his life shall lose it. You understand me? Fire upon that. And I know your friend, Rickford, Lyndon Forbes Samson Barnum. Your friend, Lyndon Forbes Samson Barnum.
Planning session.
They got plenty plans to do.
Sessions.
Fox Burnham said,
Up north.
if they take me, another Rasta gonna take me place. You understand me? I tell them boys, they come for me, somebody's got to take the chair. The king is dead. Long live the king. The fight must continue on every front. I like to see Rick Ford taking the chair and saying, let's fight PPP. Let's fight.
Well, let me tell you something. Rick Ford
Nonsense.
fighting PPP, Jagbear, Karim Bash, Super Police. I'm not a criminal.
Ah, them come by.
You're not a criminal. Only criminals must be afraid of police.
Exactly.
That's my philosophy.
We don't thief, we don't rob, we don't rape. All them people pack up in the PPP.
Exactly.
You understand me? All them pack up in the PPP. They should be worried about what the people of this country are planning for them. That is what they should be concerned about. And not who is speaking what, if you have a democratic society, a true democratic society.
You know, Sharad, yesterday, I mentioned this last night. I was talking to somebody in the PPP who I believe is earnest, very senior person in the PPP government. And I was saying to that person, listen, look at the ANOC statement. They keep telling me that I am exaggerating racism. I don't want you to exaggerate racism, whether it's to 1 degree or 2 degrees. Racism is racism.
Little racism, big racism. Little racist and big racist.
I said, okay, look, ANOC is saying the same thing I'm saying. What say you now? Well, the PNC will have to organize, and if the people believe the PNC, then they go vote them. I said, no. We don't wait until the next elections to demand good governance. We want it now. Mm-hmm. Every government that is elected by the people is elected for the people, for the country, not the people who vote for them. And that's why I said before, if you think that you are the government for your own people, then you go and govern your people somewhere else and leave the country to the patriots and the people of Guyana who believe that every citizen is equal and every citizen has rights, the same rights as others, and the country must be governed equitably. If you don't believe in that, then go somewhere else and govern who have the same beliefs with you. And they are defending that. It's like I said there must be a revolution against racism, and they're saying that is sedition. They're defending racism. Everybody should want a revolution against racism. Every race, Amerindian, Black, white, Chinese, Indian, everybody, Portuguese. Racism is the world's worst atrocity right now. It is racism that led to slavery. It is racism that led to the Holocaust. It is racism that led to genocides across the world. And it is racism that the PPP is practicing, and it's going to lead Guyana down a dangerous road. And when you warn them about their conduct and their racism, they see you as the threat. When it is their racism that is threatening the nation. Mm-hmm. And so people must continue to speak out. And that's why I was telling the congressman about their racism. Because the conversation started on Labor Day when we were on the Eastern Parkway. Mm-hmm. And you could hear me. There's a video with me telling him there's racism in Guyana. And he's like, what? Because he worked in Trinidad and he understands racism. And he didn't expect it to be in Guyana. And there's this perception, Sharad, across the Caribbean, that what obtains in the rest of the Caribbean obtains in Guyana. Same thing the PP person was doing yesterday, because they were making an analogy and say, well, if one political party marginalizes the political supporters of the other party, that's not racism. I said, in the case of Guyana, when the major supporters of the two main political parties are of a certain ethnicity, it becomes racism. Mm-hmm. Because in the PPP, we have to face the reality. They always say, well, we got the numbers. We got more East Indian people. Well, if you have a majority of East Indian people discriminating and using hate as a basis to discriminate against another section of the population, that is racism. And we don't have the ability to be racist, Sherry. They said we are racist because we're condemning their racism and exposing it. We don't have the ability to be racist. We don't express it. They express it. They express kill them out when poison them. You look on social media, poison them, kill them out. The Minister of Culture said black people got no role model. Only him and his East Indian people got role model. So when you look at their governance, institutionalized racism, they're firing black people from the ministries. They're firing black people from certain corporations of the government. They're removing people like Calvin London and Trevor Ben. Based on race. It is not politics. They don't want them to know what is going on in their government because they perceive that they're going to be of a certain political persuasion.
Aye.
And that's why this bill, the condemnation of this bill and stopping this bill, killing this bill, it's important because it is the same philosophy, political philosophy of the PPP based on race that is driving this bill. They want to secretly thief the money, give themselves power through law to thief the money, to transfer the money of the country to them and their ethnic supporters. And we must stop it. It must not happen. The money belongs to everybody. Because what we're doing is building a Sudan society in Guyana. And it is a dangerous thing that they're doing here, giving themselves authority to take up to $1.7 billion US a year with no accountability. We're going to see Pradovilles popping up all over the place, Barbies, quarantine everywhere. And you're going to have more poor people who don't support the PPP.
Yeah, you know, some of the supporters of them, some of the trenches and the jagabats that are on the podcast right now, making all kinds of wicked and lewd comments, would never own a house in the Prado, but they ain't care, you know. They ain't care. Once it's that certain set of people.
It is triumphalism, Shabbat.
Yep.
What we're seeing from the PPP supporters is ethnic triumphalism. They believe that because they won the elections via corrupt means, fraudulent means, invalid votes, fraudulent votes, that they own the country and they own the voice of the country and they own the public space. So nobody else must occupy the political and public space of the country. They believe they're entitled to it. If y'all be careful, the PPP government gonna go to court and pass a transport of Guyana in their name. That's where they go. They think the country belongs to them. They think they own the transport for Guyana. Look at their comments. Look at their comments. They think they own the country. And it is commentary, triumphalism, and racism, such as demonstrated by the PPP and their supporters, that lead nations to civil conflict. It's a fact. Even Comrade Ramjitan said it, they're inciting riots. Their actions are inciting civil conflict. And the international community must step in at this point in time and stop it. Because who's going to accept there are people being killed, there are people being racially discriminated against, there are people being victimized and marginalized, taking away jobs, taking away lands, blocking them from getting contracts. Who is going to live through 5-10 years of that nonsense without protesting? So it is the responsibility of the international community who claims that the PPP is a democratic government, but governing through autocratic measures. It is the responsibility of the American ambassador to speak out. It is the responsibility of the Canadian ambassador to speak out. It is the responsibility of the European ambassador to speak out. The same gusto the European ambassador has where he wrote Granger and tell Granger, let me see a statement of Paul. Let him write the PPP now and tell the PPP to engage in good governance. Let us see what the response is going to be.
Yep.
And it's the same
they can send out the feral blaster
responsibility the UK ambassador has, but she wasn't here June last year.
Yep.
She has a responsibility to speak out. All of them, all of the diplomats in Ghana, the Indian ambassador, all of them, Chinese, Russian, they have a response. They constitute the international community, the UN representative. All of them have a responsibility to speak out. Silence. Their silence must be condemned. It's not an option. Democracy is at stake, and they must speak out.
Indeed. Rickford, you and I are picking up this conversation this evening again in the ring. For all those who are tuned in, we're watching to program time. And Rickford is going to be back in the ring with us for us to continue this conversation on the nastiness, wickedness, the stink and dirty nature of the PPP and this nasty natural resource fund bill that they're seeking to pass here. And they have the majority. It's only act of God is going to prevent them from passing this bill. One seat majority. One seat majority. And using that nonetheless. Right? But they got some trenches who don't care One's eating a little bread, thinking, who else starving? That's why we head into a dictatorship. It's already here. It didn't come in. It didn't creep in. It's running. And that's what we're dealing with here. Rickford again. Thank you, my brother. I'm going to see you in a couple of hours. Rickford, folks, is the president of the,
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
of the Caribbean Guyana Institute for Democracy that is based in New York. And we always love to have you on our program to give guidance to these and other issues. Thanks, Rickford. I'll see you in the ring. Awesome. Folks, that's our program today. You guys took the opportunity to share the live stream. Tessa Isaacs Gravesandi, good to see you. Sumo Williams, good to see you. Paramdi, Paramdai Haricharan, good to see you out there. Andrew Cuthbert, good to see you. Jackie Baird, Andrew Cuthbert. Dundas Lois. Is Lois or Lewis? Dundas, good to see you. All you folks who have joined us, Michelle Johnson, good to see you as well, folks. Thank you for joining the podcast Below the Belt. Who vex? Who vex lose this wicked, stink and dirty PPP? Then the Parliament right now, the National Assembly, trying to pass this nasty Natural Resource Fund bill. That's what they're doing. Thieving the money, legalizing the thievery. That is what they're doing in the National Assembly. Folks, as you go, thanks for joining us for our podcast during this lunch break. We know some of you guys, based on where you are in the world, or just generally, you all eat lunch anytime. Soon as my wife finish cooking in the morning, I eat lunch 9, 10 o'clock. I ain't care. Who expects? Guys, thanks for joining us. We're going to see you back in the ring. We're going to have Rickford join us among some other folks and talking about this issue and how the wicked stink and dirty. Stay safe out there, guys. Stay safe out there. Share the live stream. Those who are going to come back and listen a little later on, share the podcast, guys. We will only bet. Thanks for joining us. Who vex lose? See you in the ring tonight at 8. Thanks for joining our podcast, Below the Belt. That's our time today, folks. Thanks for staying with us.